It's episode 20 of The Boost with my guest, Kelly Burgess, founder and CEO of Burg & Co. Let's go. All right. Welcome to The Boost, conversations with people promoting mental health. And I am absolutely delighted to be here with Kelly Burgess. She is the founder and CEO of Burg & Co. We met a few years back at the Mental Health Marketing Conference and have continued to stay in touch and collaborate. And really an exciting reason that Kelly is here is because of the work she and her marketing firm are doing in the behavioral health space, which continues to expand and get more complex and help more organizations in this space. So Kelly, it's awesome to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me here, Steve. I feel like we do a lot of our brainstorming together as we get closer to the mental health conference. So it's nice to just be able to sit down and record some of it so people can hear the madness that happens.
Yeah, I think we could have done a full episode in the pre-prep ahead of this recording, but this will be part two, and the first part is just a total secret. Nobody gets it.
You know what? And it's probably better, probably for the best.
And your window is much cooler than my Post-it note wall. Where are you today?
Well, first off, I love your Post-it note wall. I totally get it. That is how my mind also works with big things. You got to be able to visually put stuff around. I get it. But yeah, no, so we're here. I'll lift you up a little bit. I'm in our Tampa office. So we just have a nice little river view, which is good. Actually, that's the bay behind me. Excuse me. Hillsborough River's on the other side. And then we actually are you familiar with the Lightning hockey fan?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So Amalie Arena is right there, which is really fun.
Okay.
So that's where the Lightning plays. But
okay, I'm more of a Smashville Preds fan, but yes, familiar with the Lightning.
Yes. So I will send you a picture later. So our COO and also my sister-in-law, Haley Burgess, is in Nashville. We have our Nashville office up there that she mans, and they are huge Smashville Preds fans. I guess if you're in the vicinity, that is what you gravitate toward. So we had a bet as a healthy family. We had many sports bets during COVID, and there was a series, a Stanley Cup run, where the Lightning and the Preds were really facing off. And so we had a bet. Whoever won, the gentleman had a bet. Whoever won, the other person would have to buy them a jersey. So if the Preds won, then Tom, my brother-in-law, was going to send Ryan, my husband, down a Preds jersey. And the deal was he had to wear the Preds jersey to every single Lightning game. Whether we were watching it on TV, watching it at the stadium, he had to wear the Preds jersey.
So
that was
awkward.
The deal. And we were so arrogant. We took that bet. We took that bet easily. Didn't even think about it. Took the bet, and the Lightning lost.
Easy money, except for that part.
Then, yeah. So the Lightning lost. And then Tom conveniently could not find a jersey. So he sent Ryan a onesie. It is a full Preds, long sleeve, long pants, butt flap onesie.
What?
And the rest of the deal has had to be upheld.
Wait, an adult size onesie or a baby size
onesie? No, it's an adult size onesie. Ryan is 6'3". He's a large man. He's skinny, but he's a tall dude. Yeah, no, this is a full adult Preds onesie. And every time the Lightning plays now, this is my life.
I think you could have pushed back. That is not a jersey. That is outside the terms of the engagement.
He conveniently could not find a jersey anywhere, ever, that's ever existed. Yeah. Couldn't find one.
Wow. You need to run that bet back and then just pay back. Or you're going to lose again. That's the danger. Then you're both in onesies cheering for the wrong team.
At that point, we'll just buy one for Olive and the dog, too.
It's a family affair.
It's fine.
Yeah. Wow.
So anyway, Emily's right there.
Yeah, so there's that. Does Tampa have soccer going on?
We
Pro
have
soccer?
We have the Rowdies. Yeah, the Tampa Rowdies. I am very proud of myself that I knew that because I can't tell you where their stadium is.
Okay.
And I don't think I've ever been to a game. I'm not a huge soccer person. Full respect for the sport, just not my thing. Yeah. But I think we have a pretty good club. Yeah.
Okay.
We have the Bucks.
Yeah, you do.
Which no one actually votes for if you're here in Tampa. No one is an actual Bucks fan.
Oh, really?
But I was really happy that we had Brady for a few years.
He's gone?
We had,
He's not there anymore?
Of hope. No, I think he finally really retired.
Okay. Okay.
I
I've
think.
lost touch with football. I've picked up soccer a little bit. I played when I was a kid,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
Nashville got the club, of course, and
What's
Messi.
Nashville's soccer team?
It's just the Nashville Soccer Club. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
It's not like the Rowdies or whatever it is. Yeah, but they had Messi, and for the playoffs, and he put in. He's in Miami. He put in just an incredible goal in the upper left corner. The guy's a magician. But I've gotten hooked on soccer, and I feel like as the United States grows up and matures, we're moving off of American football. And no disrespect. I just feel like soccer for me is a slightly more beautiful game. It's a little bit more like chess rather than
Yes.
like, I don't know, a good
Less brute
comparison.
strength.
Checkers isn't really football, but it's a little bit like X's and O's and blocking and tackling and do your job. And chess is a little, soccer and chess, which I've also gotten into chess lately because my 8-year-old daughter is getting into chess. So I've been like spending my nights like boning up on strategy because she beat me the other day. She like took my queen and it was a total mistake.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, she's good.
Oh,
She's like thinking a few bounces of the ball down the road. And
I
so
love
I'm
that.
struggling to keep up. But I do love the strategy of soccer and chess. And I just as I mature, I hopefully am moving that direction too. It feels like progress to me anyway.
It does seem like, at least the chess side, it's a much better intellectual way to spend your time for sure.
Yeah, it's fascinating too. There's like basics of chess that I've learned, maybe you already know, but I'm just learning it in my mid 40s
Did
now.
you
But
not?
there's the strategy of claiming the center of the board is really the thing. So there was that show, The Queen's Gambit, and I
Oh,
didn't really
love
know
it.
what that meant, but it's basically where you move your queen, the pawn in front of your queen, directly out into the board, and then the pawn next to that out into the middle of the board, and you just claim the center. And that's really where the opening game happens, is
It's a bold move.
how can you position. And most novice players kind of edge along the sides, or they try to stay out of danger, and
Yeah.
that's almost sure failure. You have to be aggressive and plant the flag in the middle, and then develop your pieces kind of behind that, where you can start to claim different squares on the rank and file. So it's really a lot of fun.
Oh, just think about the life analogies that you're going to have, like the conversations that you're going to have with your daughter over that chessboard. That's
Oh,
incredible.
yeah, they're just sitting right there. It's like you barely have to
Mhm.
do anything except talk about chess, and then all of a sudden there's these life lessons about, yeah, how to be aggressive and assertive in the right moments, and how
Yeah,
to think
play the
ahead.
card.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
My dad, I don't know if you know this about me, but I played softball from the time I was 6 all the way through college.
Okay.
And my dad was always my coach from the time I was 6 up until I got into college. And it was we balanced that relationship well. I think there's a fine line when you're in that competitive space of like you have to segment, right? Like there are some times that he's my coach and there are some times that he's my dad. And we really balance that beautifully. But I will say in my 30s now, there are still, every time I call my dad, which is regularly, there are still life lessons that are brought back to baseball and softball. And like we joke, like baseball is life. It's just like everything that could ever happen in life can be a baseball analogy. And that's, you guys are going to have that with chess.
Nice. I played a lot of baseball as a kid and up until college. I got out of it in high school. I played some different sports, water polo and swimming and stuff, but I got back
That's so
into it
cool.
in college, and it was a lot of fun. I love
Nice.
baseball. I used to watch it. I used to watch the Orioles because of Cal Ripken Jr. I just loved his
Nice.
consistency.
Okay.
He's just a
That's fair.
rock. And then the Padres, because that's where I lived, in like north of San Diego. So those were
Okay.
my
All right.
teams.
I've always been a Yankees fan, and before I get any hate from that, I grew up. We have Legends Field right here in Tampa where their spring training is, and so I grew up going to Legends Field with my dad and watching them through spring training.
Cool.
But also, Derek Jeter's rookie year was the same year that I started playing softball, and so he was like the one to watch, and who like my dad would we would when we would watch the games together, he would like have me break down like his movements and watch his footwork, and we'd go home and practice. And like he was the one to emulate, both in character, of course. He's, I would say, hands down the best captain that baseball has ever seen, but also, I mean, just in fundamentals and mechanics. And so we would just spend hours and hours just watching him and trying to emulate what he does. So Yankees fan all the way.
Well, you're not going to get hate from me because my dad is like Yankees fan number one.
Perfect.
We went to Yankee Stadium before I don't know if they tore it down, but they moved to the new
They
stadium.
moved it. Yeah.
And
I never made it to
A-Rod
the
was
old one.
sitting on home run number 599. And we went to the game. Beautiful night. And everybody jacked out a home run except for A-Rod. There were like 12 home runs that night. And he hit one to the warning track. And of course the place lost it went bananas, but he didn't hit it that night. So we were
Oh,
hoping because we all,
that would
we
have been
traveled out there. But life lesson from Derek Jeter, maybe you know this. His parents had him write up a contract, or they wrote up a contract about the things in his life that he wanted to do at an early age. So it wasn't about, hey, you need to stay in baseball, or it wasn't coming from the parents. It was actually, hey, Derek, if you're going to commit to this, you need to write up what you're going to do, and then you're going to sign it like it's an actual piece of paper that you sign and say, these are the things I agree to do. And I think that's so powerful to have a written record for a kid as they continue to
yeah.
develop through programs. I've been meaning to implement that, except my daughter is so into horseback riding that it's like her happy place, her passion place
I love that.
is riding horses. So we hardly need a contract, but I do think it's a good idea. And I think it's potentially something that's a testament to Derek Jeter's self-commitment and success
Sure.
in life.
Absolutely. I mean, that I did not know that fact. That is incredible. Thank you for sharing it. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. If you have a kid sign their commitments of what they're going to put into this, it gives them that level of autonomy, that ownership over it, which I think kids obviously all humans crave that, but really when you're in that space of, trying to follow dreams and do your own thing, but still well under your parents' roof, like that level of autonomy goes so far. And then also, forcing him to, because he signed that paper, builds that self-dedication and drive. It's incredible. I love it.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Is 3 too young to have my kid sign something? She can write her name backward, but she can do, like, we can sign something.
With chocolate pudding. Yeah.
We started a chore chart over the weekends. One of our friends
Oh,
had mentioned that they have a chore chart, and I was like,
yeah.
oh, that's genius. So we started a chore chart, and Olive agreed. We sat down as a family and we agreed, like, okay, what are the 4 things that you're responsible for every day? And she got to have buy-in and agree to that. And we're like, okay, this is your chore chart. You get a sticker for the ones that you do. If you don't miss a day, you get, ice cream Friday. She has been enthusiastically like running to put her clothes away, running to make her bed, like picking up all of her toys. We don't even have to beg her because she had the buy-in of like, these are the things that I want to be responsible for. And she is like, she's in it. We have not missed a day yet. We
Oh,
haven't had any tantrums
yes.
about it. There's been no coercion. Like,
Yeah.
she's in it. And I am kicking myself for not thinking of this sooner.
Yeah, be
Genius.
easy on yourself. There's no equation, but to
Oh man,
stumble
there's
into
not.
that, to be open enough to listen and implement that is fantastic. Well, thank you for coming on my podcast about parenting and sports. I really appreciate
Yes.
it.
Yeah, thank you everyone for listening. And for all of you parents and sports fans out there, we've loved
Yeah.
having you.
Well, I'm gonna this is delightful. This is perfect. And I'm gonna try to turn the ship into what we planned on ahead of time out of respect for your expertise, which is the idea of humanity. And I think this is a
Yeah,
very human intro and a very human unscripted conversation. And I think
yeah.
it's powerful in today's age.
Mm.
I had a passing thought that how funny would it be to create a podcast where I'm actually like a deep fake AI driven host, which I might be. That's my personality.
We don't
But
know.
then you're a real human on the other side interacting with me. And so it's like, Derek Jeter's parents and like spitting these facts. How fascinating
No,
would that be?
I would listen to that podcast.
I
I
would totally
would.
watch it.
That would be, I mean, that would be a test to see how far has AI come. Like, is it really as good as people think it is, right? Like, that's the
Yeah.
test.
That's the test.
And
And
yet, I feel like as much, and listen, let me just broadcast this ahead of time for whatever comes down the pipe with this conversation. I love all new technological innovation. Like, it can all be used, it can make our lives more efficient. So whatever comes down the pipe on this, I am certainly not saying no to anything. However, I do feel like sometimes, at least in the space I'm in, I have seen people embrace AI as if it acts just like what you said, where it is like it can just answer anything on the flip of a switch, and really meet people where they are, and have this human interaction, even though it's AI. And I maybe I will always be
mm,
open-minded. Wouldn't that be
I
wonderful?
like that.
But I have seen it tried to be implemented that way, and man, it just misses the mark.
Mm,
We work a lot in the healthcare space, and the mental health space, but we have a client who is, they're a fertility clinic.
mhm.
And so I'm not going to give any names or anything, and they're not on our website, so I can say this example, but they're a fertility clinic. They work with, just really, you talk about emotional messaging, right? Like, you have these couples who are trying to conceive. They've been going through just an emotional roller coaster throughout this process, and they're just trying to get answers. And so, and the clinic that they have is really incredible at meeting people there. I think they have like an 80% success rate on couples getting pregnant, which is
Wow.
phenomenally, like, over double what the national average is. So they're doing some really incredible stuff. But all of that to say, they started embracing AI as if it was like God's gift to marketing right out of the gate.
Mm,
And so we had all of this traffic coming to the site, but no one was calling it. I mean, their conversion numbers just floored.
yeah.
And so we're like, okay, let's figure out what's going on. Let's do an audit. And the first thing we saw was that this content would literally open up with, well, you're trying to get pregnant. And it's like, oh God, that's not, if somebody called you in this state, are you telling me that that's how your team would answer this? Like, well, you're trying to have a baby. Like, you're having a hard time getting pregnant. How is that possible?
I don't know if that's
Right?
the brand
Like,
voice.
oh my goodness, but it was all over their site. And so, like, getting people to their site wasn't an issue, right? Like, Google's changed their algorithm since then, so I would dare say it would be an issue now to even get people to the site. But, like,
Yeah.
at the time, that wasn't the problem. But actually making that human connection,
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
was not happening. I would say it even did more damage. It wasn't even neutral at that point. Like, that was just damaging. I doubt
Hmm.
those people came back. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have come back.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
mercy.
Well, looky here. You're trying to have a baby, but you can't. Yeah, that's not the empathetic approach.
No, that's like
They
the mean uncle at Thanksgiving. Like, what?
well, I know that this is years ago, so we're light years ahead, but they unleashed AI in an early experiment for website optimization, and it was
Mm,
like, well, let's just let AI drive and
yeah,
make
totally.
tweaks to the website, update images, and it quickly spiraled into a pornography site because the AI was like, well, we've figured out what people want, you know. It's like, well, yeah, technically, but like, we have a ways to go here. But one of my favorite
Totally. Like,
authors, because I have these post-it notes like on my wall, like
yes, your crime
it's
scene.
almost like a Miro board or a project management board, but for whatever reason, I can move faster and I can comprehend more rather than staring into a screen. So
Mm,
I either need a much bigger, more versatile, faster screen, or I'll just use my office wall and move as quickly as possible. And one of my favorite authors is Nassim Nicholas Taleb, and he's written some amazing books. And something he talks about is when we launched the Kindle, and when you sit next to people on a plane who have a Kindle, they'll say things like, "Well, this is almost like a real book. Like look at the page color. Like it's almost like a real book." And plus, I can store 1,000 books. And Taleb might say, you know what's even more like a real book? A real book. And Also, are you planning to fly for 10,000 hours?
Why would you need 1,000 books with you?
Like, do you just have a hard time making decisions? Like this
It's
sounds more of like
fascinating.
a different kind of problem than carrying a book. So I have a library in my den, and it's like I just love it because I picked up a book today. I picked up Hemingway and did a LinkedIn post on writing simply because it's so beautiful. It's so timeless. And in another one of his books, A Movable Feast,
Mhm.
his his opening sentence is something like, "And then there was the bad weather." It's like, oh my God,
So
what a
good.
beautiful, simple sentence. And good luck AI writing that. But maybe it's possible. Like I'm also open-minded to the idea that things are improving and getting better, and we make these leaps in technology. So now that
Yeah,
we're 21 minutes in, let's put a pin on that. This
I'll come
is
back to Hemingway because
going.
he's my favorite author. So we will
Oh,
connect offline.
really? Oh my
Oh yeah.
gosh. Okay,
Yes.
we're going to go right back to Hemingway after this short break where we do the virtual hug and the shameless plug, which I sometimes use as just a conversation starter. We don't need it. But let's check these boxes. So
Cool.
tell us somebody or something you're grateful for today as your own virtual hug.
Ooh, yeah. So right before this, I got off a call with Lightfully, who is also going to be at the conference.
Love
They're
them.
amazing. Anyone who's listening to this, if you have a chance, I think they're recording a podcast too, right? Like I will shamelessly plug for Lightfully because they have to have the coolest company culture I have ever witnessed. It is incredible, and all of
So
those women
intent
are just.
so
And
intentional. I quote it. I steal it actually. I said things today that are
you said the wabi
direct.
sabi.
Well, yeah, I said wabi sabi, which is like that idea of like the beauty and imperfection. I said that, but I
Yeah.
also said, clarity is kindness, and
Mm.
a consistent cadence of communication is kindness, and that's ripped right off of their website. And
Oh
I
yeah.
sat with that idea for a long time. So yeah, go ahead. I love them.
Yeah, they're incredible. We certainly don't have favorites, but man, they're fun to work with. But yeah, so anyway, I just got off a call with Lightfully. We were doing our marketing check-in, and I am super thankful for Katie, she's their VP of marketing over there, and you guys will hear her speak at the conference. But she comes in kind of outside of the healthcare world, and I think one of the things that we hit continually in this is even for ourselves as well, like this is self-reflective of after you've been marketing in the healthcare space for so long, it's very easy to fall into this idea of like, well, this is just kind of how it's done, right? And but Katie didn't come from the healthcare world. She came from like luxury branding. And so she brings this perspective of how to meet people in their unique needs
Mm,
and have them feel seen. I mean, just really truly seen through marketing, through branding, which I think is what luxury brands do incredibly well,
mm,
but what healthcare and mental health is just not done historically well. And so she brings this perspective that I swear to you, Steve, every time I get off of a call with her, I'm refreshed and rejuvenated. Like the things that she says push me outside of my own box in the most uncomfortable and growing way. And I love it. I absolutely love my calls with her. So I'm going to do
mm.
my virtual hug about Katie and maybe my shameless plug about Lively. Like I think that that all kind of tied in together. That's fine. They
It
can they
was
can
two
steal the
for
stage.
one.
They earned it.
Nicely done. Nicely done. That was very efficient. Yeah, I love the Lightfully folks. I love their values.
Yeah.
Super inspiring and
Oh yeah.
legit. They live it out. They talk about it
They
all the time, and
do.
they are constantly like checking the temperature on, are we actually doing this, and walking the talk.
It's
I got to
amazing.
hang out with Katie at Hollywood in Mind, which is an event in
Yeah.
Beverly Hills earlier this year. Phenomenal event put on that brought together like the Hollywood industry, and Demi Lovato was there, and
Oh wow.
Master P was there, and they have these deep stories around mental health. So
Yeah.
it was awesome that Lightfully was there too. But yeah, they're just on a tear. I mean, they're a behavioral health organization that they spoke last year at the conference, and they had maybe a couple few programs going on in early 2022, I want to say. And now I don't even know how many. Is it 20 or so? I mean, 15 or 20 programs, or
It's a
it's hard to
lot.
keep
It's a
up.
lot. I don't know what the actual number is, but we partner with them for their marketing. And I can tell you, like, Katie is emailing us, it feels like every other week, about new programs, whether they're like
That's so
physical
great.
facilities or virtual programs that they've been launching. And it's incredible.
That's awesome. And you're going to be talking at the conference in two respects. One is you're going to be collaborating with Lightfully, which is a wonderful
So
conversation
excited.
around, I mean, it's a multiple viewpoints from the C-suite and the executive leadership and how to drive a company that is high growth, and also how to keep the culture and
Mhm.
the mission and the vision and the values at the center of that. And then
Yeah.
you're also going to be on a panel, which is great, around mid-size and larger high growth organizations. And that's something we've done a better job of targeting this year because, 7 or 8 years ago, it was mostly about the solopreneur or the group practice operator who didn't know how to do a website, and that's something they needed to do in addition to their other responsibilities. Now we've seen so much specialization and organizations benefiting from partnership with marketing agencies like yours that just bring their own expertise, which lets the behavioral health organization work at the top of their licensure or do what they do best, at least,
Yeah.
and help attract and find more leads and more clients who align and have an affinity toward the services being provided. So I celebrate it, but it is a big transition in the industry.
It is. It is. And I mean, there's space for all of it, right? So solopreneurs, like those, man, solopreneurs in the mental health space have to have probably the most heart and drive. Like they are in it for, like, it is their passion to help people. And that's something that is just, it's hard to replicate. So there's absolute space for everyone at the conference. And we love getting to know everyone there. But I have noticed that it's been gravitating more toward the larger clinics, which still full of passion and purpose, just with a slightly larger reach, which is
Mhm.
great. More people helped.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm the same way as you. I love for everybody to come. I love that it's a little bit of a mixed bag between executives
Yeah.
and marketers and clinicians, and then,
Yeah.
straight up some advocates who come and I think that's healthy for the culture of the conference, actually.
It is.
Yeah. And
Mm.
one other idea there is that, let's say we are seeing the infusion of private equity and technology. Everybody's trying to solve for access, and everybody's
Mhm.
trying to chop that up in different ways. And there's a lot of efficiencies that can be had. We see franchise models and all the rest. And at the same time, a marketing conference has never been more relevant to the solopreneur who's just out there hustling and grinding in their community. And I would anticipate in the next 3 to 5 years feeling quite a bit more pressure to fill up the books compared to kind of the boon that we've had recently, unfortunately, as we've all become much more aware of the mental health and mental illness challenges or situation that we have in the country. And that's a wonderful thing, to move beyond awareness into interest and engagement,
Mhm.
certainly. But there's also a demographic bottleneck of people 40 to 50 years old, people my age, which is the common age for nurse practitioners and physicians and therapists. Well, we're real tight on that age group right now. And we have a lot of people ahead of that and behind that. So there is going to be a wash through of that bottleneck. And people younger than that age cohort are just as eager to go become therapists and nurses and doctors as ever. They've studied
Mhm.
who's going to school. And so that's not slowing
Yeah.
down. So there is going to be that shifting of the tide, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to predict anything after COVID and after just the drastic burnouts that we saw in the mental health space with professions. I have zero predictions for how this is going to go down. But I do think you brought up an interesting point, though, of, as a culture, we are more readily accepting of mental health conversation. Like we're more open to it, we're engaging with it. But from a marketing perspective, we're also seeing this really interesting shift from what I would call like Gen Z, kind of teens, young adults, early 20s, where because the culture has shifted so kind of like a pendulum, I would
Hmm.
say drastically, shifted toward this mental health piece where like we were kind of flirting with the idea of like maybe mental health is kind of important. And then COVID hit and everyone crashed and we were like, oh my God, mental health, we don't have an infrastructure for this. This is a really big deal. And everyone's kind of screwed up after this big global pandemic. And so we had this like pendulum shift to the point now where we're seeing the younger generations are just kind of watering down what it means to be bipolar or have anxiety, or like really using these big complex kind of heavy terms so conversationally that it almost desensitizes and
Hmm.
loses the value. And so we're
Hmm.
having to figure out how to, because it doesn't mean that the conditions are gone and everyone's magically like okay and we all have like conversational mental health issues. Like that's not the case in the slightest. But now we've got to figure out how to take that conversation and appreciate the engagement that's happening and foster that conversation, but add in a level of depth of like, okay, well, like, so we just did an article on what's the difference between like a panic attack and an anxiety attack. Now, clinically, they're both the same thing. I am no
Hmm.
clinician, so please don't come at me. But from what I understand, clinically, they're the same thing. But conversationally, they're very different in the Gen Z kind of dictionary. So we're really trying to figure out how do we take that conversation that is so eager to be engaged with and still bring the depth and the power that needs to be there so it's not watered down. It's been a
Hmm.
really interesting shift. COVID did a lot of crazy things to the mental health space.
Yeah, no joke. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, almost everything moves in waves. I love to watch the macro. And yeah, you're right. There's one thing about not talking about it, not saying it at all. And then
Yeah.
there's another thing about these words have lost meaning or they've lost the nuance or the
Yeah.
power. So,
Yeah.
how to find that balance in between the
Yeah.
sort of the yin yang of suppression.
Oh,
I'm always repeating this, but Jung said, what you resist persists. So I
mm,
think that's a wonderful outcome of COVID, is at least if there's an element of stigma that was being suppressed or not talked about, well, we certainly pulled that out of the woodwork, and then we can deal with it, because like
yeah.
any good therapy, you can't deal with the thing that's unspoken. I think
Sure.
I think the first step in addiction, recovery, Alcoholics Anonymous, is admit there's a problem, which is to give it a name and to say this is an issue. But
Yeah.
inevitably, we throw that pendulum too far the other way. So you're kind of counteracting that back to center with some content marketing that helps people how to just get more specific about what's actually going on here and move toward action is really the point.
Yeah, I think, just understanding where is the conversation actually, because I think that's what we often miss in the healthcare spaces. We are so deep, I say we kind of holistically of all of us, clinicians, marketers, everyone in the healthcare space. So we are so deep in the weeds that sometimes we think the conversation is happening a certain way, but it's not actually in that space. And so I think we need to, what we've been trying to do is really get a pulse on what is the actual conversation around mental health and how does that conversation change in
Hmm.
demographics, right? So again, Gen Z is having a very different conversation than what is they're not boomers. What's the 40s to 50s? It's not
Like
millennials,
Gen X.
maybe. You know what? Gen Z and millennials are having very different conversations.
Hmm.
Like they're just very different stages of life and the conversations are very different. And so understanding like what is the actual pulse, and instead of doing kind of blanket statement marketing, which I think has been historically done in mental health, really trying to become nuanced and pivot the conversation based on who is coming to you, excuse me, to your site. So really making it more like somebody's calling up a friend to talk about their day and to talk about their experiences, and you're meeting that conversation the same way you would if a friend called you, than having like just like you said in the beginning, like here's my one script and I'm going to say this script whether it's an 18-year-old struggling with mental health issues and starting at college, or a 40-year-old parent who is suffering through depression, and I'm going to say the same script and hope it works,
Hmm.
which is kind of what's been done in marketing for a
Yeah.
very long time.
Hmm.
So I think the shifts in conversation and a lot of the shifts in technology are allowing us as marketers to shift for the better and actually use more technology to become more human, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. And to meet people where they are, you see this meme every once in a while where it has something to do with a person freaking out when somebody calls them. It's like there's a younger culture. It's like, no, I don't want to talk on the phone. I don't want to talk on the phone to my friend,
Yes.
and you're obviously
Yes.
you're younger than me, although you've done more, which is kudos to you.
I don't think that's the man with the
Accomplish more in
massive
less time.
post-it board behind him of all of the people who are gathering together. I think there's
Oh, that
there
old
is a
thing.
oh,
Yeah,
the
no,
one that
no,
I
but like
constantly leave up.
I do, I don't really relate. I kind of do relate. I straddle a line between two generations. Like
Yeah.
I'm on the line of millennial and Gen X, and
Yeah.
so there is a part of me that's like, yeah, actually, I don't know if I need a 45-minute conversation on the
Yes.
phone. And so, how are we doing that in our marketing? And then to your point, just to add on about Katie at Lightfully and how like a luxury brand perspective in healthcare generally, as we move toward pricing visibility, and
Yeah.
you sort of have to justify your rates because we've thrown open the kimono more and more on pricing, but also in the mental health side of things, behavioral health side, there is a stigma
Mhm.
around charging money to
It
solve
is
people's
interesting as well.
problems, as if all of business isn't predicated on solving people's problems. But when
Oh, yeah.
it comes to sensitive problems, mental health problems, it's like we put it in a different category. And maybe there's a great reason for that I haven't fully thought through, but it's fascinating. That's like, well, I don't want to charge too much because what a serious problem. It's like, no, that's when you should probably charge as much as the market could bear because
Yeah.
it, I mean, but then you're right. Like we don't have a national sort of safety net for serious mental illness and conditions that are always probably going to exist in all likelihood.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up an interesting point, right? So I think everyone, I would hope, blanket statement here, I would hope that everyone understands the severity of mental illness and just the basic human need to be able to come alongside somebody and who's struggling and say like, hey, like we can help you. We can help you through this. Your life does not have to be experienced this way. There is help here. And so I get that pushback. But at the same time, we still need resources to be able to provide that help to people. So, it's Lightfully, as we're using the example, they're a residential facility throughout California and they're into other states now as well. But their facilities are gorgeous. And I always think to myself, I have never needed residential treatment, but if I did, I would want to go to a facility like Lightfully as opposed to a hole in the wall facility if they're not charging any money and they don't have resources, because that just doesn't seem like a place where I'm going to find a lot of healing if everything is cluttered and kind of dirty. And, so I don't think that there's a problem in charging for as long as the resources match what you're charging and you really are providing a service and helping people through. I don't think it's on the facilities to not charge. I think it's on the insurance companies that they need to cover it. Like that's where the real fallout is, right? Like if people have mental health issues and it takes good resources to fix that, then why isn't that covered? Which
Mm-hmm.
I know nothing about the insurance industry, so I can make these blanket statements all day long with zero solutions whatsoever. So everyone just hear my critique. Somebody else solve this for me. But it's but it does seem like that is, the resources should not be apologized for ever. But as long as the services provided are good and they come from a place of really helping. But why is this not covered on all insurances? This is crazy.
Yeah, we've left it out in the cold for sure. And I think there's some exciting progress being made for sure. There's been a lot of focus on census and head
Yeah.
count and turnover. But I do feel I agree with you, and I feel like we are sort of moving that direction. I just don't know if we can do it. I don't know if we can solve for it in the private sphere. I don't know that. I think we can get better about access and awareness, but when it comes to payment, it feels like for me, not for everybody, but for a certain percentage of the population, it's going to simply be some broader solution. Let's say, for
Yeah.
example, it's like there's so much judgment toward people who have cancer who are also smokers. It's like, well, you can look
Yeah.
at the numbers and you can say, but really, are we treating those people as like, well, that's kind of your fault, that's what you did, so
Stigma.
it is the stigma. Yeah. And so we're still struggling with it, even, you know, in the behavioral health and bio side,
Mm,
both. So no easy solutions. But I do feel like after reading Dr. Thomas Insel's book, Healing, where he talks about people, place, and purpose as
mm,
sort of the trifecta for mental health, I mean, that's why the opposite side of that coin, loneliness, is so devastating. And I believe also, to your point about place, that you build your house and then your house builds you, and that part
yeah.
of your culture is predicated on location. And we see it in the long view, like cities that grew up around rivers were very different than cities that grew up around mountains. It's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Well, yeah, there's more. If you break that down, there's so much more influence that a place can have. And then purpose, of course. Like, what are we doing with our lives that's higher than making money, or some other basic kind of, yeah, sure, important, but kind of rather low inspirational opportunity for doing something important with our lives. So yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with you about place.
Yeah, I think it makes a big difference. Sorry, there's actually the screensaver on my phone, which is dead right now, or else I would show it to you. I'll have to plug that in later. But saver on my phone, or the home screen, is, I don't know if you're familiar, but there's a verse in the Old Testament where Moses' prayer is, Lord, teach me to number my days that I would gain a heart of wisdom. And that one came to me over and over and over again during COVID, because we were new parents. And so I had a 4-month-old baby. We were trying to transition to parenthood, which I think is a difficult transition. Maybe it's not for everyone. It was very difficult for me. I had no idea what to expect, and the things that I thought I could expect were completely thrown out the window.
Mm.
And we were both working full-time jobs. And so just trying to
Wow.
transition to it all and keeping full-time jobs going and trying to have some semblance of self, that was the verse that came over and over. And it's just like what you were saying, of like trying to find purpose, trying to find, what are we doing here outside of just making money and doing the next thing, right? It's the whole point of the prayer is basically, give me that beautiful wisdom that people have on their deathbeds, where it's like, oh, that was what was important in life. Give me that wisdom today, so that I make the choices today with that end goal, knowing that my days are finite and one day I will be on that deathbed and I don't want to look back with regrets. Like, give me that wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry, that was
Yeah,
totally out of the, the
that's
realm of
huge.
conversation. But you
That's
were
huge.
talking
No, we
about
don't need
purpose,
to.
and that is like, we were just talking about that in my family chat that we have going constantly. That
Oh.
came up actually. So,
So what is a one perspective or insight of wisdom that you feel like because this is a powerful idea. Actually, it's something I talk about with my daughter, and I think about all the time for myself, which is something I heard. There was like a presentation that was recorded at Google's campus, and I forget who gave it. I think it was like a Stanford PhD or somebody. I need to learn her name, but it was a while ago that I watched it. But anyway, her point was, think about 80-year-old you and do things that 80-year-old you would like, because guess what? If you're lucky, that's what's going to happen, is you're going to turn into 80-year-old you. And then what? And that flipped the switch for me on deferred gratification and
mm,
investment, and coming
yeah,
up from my own culture and my own nurture situation as like, rather limited means, always cared for, always food on the table. So what's something that you kind of, what's 80-year-old, what are you playing the game for 80-year-old Kelly?
yeah. So
This might become like a standard question in my podcast format, or at least my
I
deep
love this
fake
question. I
hour.
love this question. So I heard this sermon once, not to take you to church today, but apparently that's where we're
We're
going.
going.
So I heard this sermon once, and it was just beautifully, like, divinely orchestrated right as we were starting the business. And it was all about not trading the, hold on, because I always mix this up, not
Freudian
trading the,
slip.
I know. Every time I'm like, ooh, not
Don't
trading
trade the
the,
important for what you want
yes,
right now. Go
yes,
ahead.
don't trade the irreplaceable for the replaceable. And so, or don't trade, he said, don't trade the eternal for the temporary. But then he broke it down and said, don't trade the irreplaceable for the replaceable. And he went on to say things that we all know, right? So like this is not new information, but the way that he kind of threaded it all together was really beautiful to me. But he was talking about like if I die tomorrow, Haley will take over the company, our clients will continue on, people will be sad, I hope, but like the company will still stand, people will still have jobs, everything will still move forward, your conference will still go on, like you'll slot somebody else into that panel,
Should I
everything
still
moves
publish this podcast?
forward.
I don't know what to do.
Yes, you
Okay.
should. You're fine. It's
Okay.
going
In
to get better. This
memoriam.
is not so grim. So, but like things will move forward. But the things that won't move forward is like I will always be Olive's only mom. Her name is actually Olivia, please, people. I did not name my child Olive. I just feel like that should be said. But we call her Olive. So I will always be Olive's only mother. I better be Ryan's only wife. There are things in this world that I am just irreplaceable. And the interesting thing is that when we have that wisdom piece, right? Like when we make our daily decisions based on that kind of deathbed wisdom, what is actually important in life, we find that I will not get this time back with Olive. I can
Right.
always find time to work more. But what actually happens is if I prioritize myself to where my family truly is first, not just when we say our family's first, but we're still kind of like taking that last phone call and like we're half listening and half working and like, but like if we really make our family first, which a lot of times looks like, okay, I have to leave this checklist undone because my family needs me right now. Olive is sick and I have to stay home. And you know what? This is where I need to be right now. And it takes, I feel like it takes as much determination and like self, what is it? Why am I losing the word of like being able to get yourself to do something? Drive essentially, but it really does take as
Discipline.
much, if not more, to do that than I think just our normal daily grind of like, I got to get more done. Like it is harder for me to step back and really put my family first. But when I do that, my family thrives and my work thrives. Because now I'm coming at work refreshed and I'm not coming at work with guilt of like, oh, I'm doing this because I need to, but really my family needs me and I'm split. And like, but if I can live in that prioritization, no matter how hard it is, but really understand that these are the things that matter, that's when life just goes well. Like situations aren't always great, but life goes well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You've got your long-term priorities in order.
Yeah.
Certainly we rely on Parkinson's law, the work gets done in the time allowed, but also you're working from a position of discipline and purpose. And it could be argued that the way you do one thing is the way you do all things. So
yes,
maybe it feels like, wow, I'm kind of cutting out on work to take care of this sick kid right now. And it's interesting too about not just irreplaceable, but irreversible and decision making. When like I've come to build up the muscle of decision making because one of my sort of check boxes in the matrix is this reversible or irreversible? And if it's reversible, then I make it as fast as possible.
But I think, it's not to step on, I guess we're just bringing Lightfully into all of this too, but not to step on Lightfully's toes in what they're going to talk about at the conference with culture. But I have found that having this prioritization and sticking to it, which again is so just incredibly difficult so many days. Not that I don't love my family, but like as a type A driven entrepreneur kind of person, it is hard sometimes to rein yourself in and refocus in on the priorities when there are tight deadlines. So it's just that is the only hard piece. Otherwise, I spend all of my time with my family. But all of that to say, when we do prioritize this and really push it in, it forces us to find partners who have those same values, because it very quickly, like when we really started living this company culture, which like Haley has been really incredible about taking this kind of wisdom piece and pushing it into our company culture and just allowing people to be where they are in life. And our team works so hard, and our work production, efficiency, quality has been through the roof since allowing people to just live a life, which sounds so like, of course people should live a life. And yet, but like our workforce, we really try to keep people at 80% capacity. Like that way, if life happens and somebody has to take off, there's not a pinch. It's like, okay, well, we've got wiggle room. Great, take off. Go do what you need to do. like, it just gives us so much more flexibility. But it really, that whole shift internally forced us to take a deep look at the partnerships that we had and the clients that we were working with. And there were most of them matched beautifully, and it just made the partnership stronger. Some of
Mm.
them did not match, very openly did not match with this mindset. And so even though the deliverables didn't change and the results didn't change, the mindset changed. And we just realized, like, we didn't enjoy working with them as much. Not that they weren't
Mhm.
lovely people, but we just didn't enjoy working with them as much, and promoting their brands as much as promoting the brands that we knew also took care of their people, not just their patients. And it really shifted who we target to work with as well. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's just been, again, a little nugget born out of COVID that just kind of carried through and made big waves.
That's interesting. When I went to talk therapy initially, consistently, I use this terminology. I moved off of what I call the competitive path, which is like a very scarcity driven path, into the creative path, which is creating things of value for people in need. And once I got down that path, I had a tremendous experience of finding affinity with people in my tribe, people doing like-minded things. They would just find me and stick to me, and I would stick to them. And this conversation is an example of dozens and dozens and dozens of conversations with people who all of a sudden appeared. It's like when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I was like, oh my gosh, like all of a sudden, so, and this
It's
conference
crazy.
is a living example of that, where it's just amazing what, like, the people that find you once you start living. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's fascinating. So I can see why your work culture would benefit and your clients would benefit. One, it's important to understand that every machine has waste. Every
Yeah.
system
Oh
produces
yeah.
waste. We try to hide it in cars, but there's still exhaust and there's still output and waste of
Yeah.
energy. We haven't perfected the system yet, so you have to embrace that in the systems that we create that involve humans. There's going to be some waste. So it
Yeah.
reminds me of a Simpsons episode where Homer Simpson becomes like the manager of the nuclear plant, and he's like, hey, could you guys just like work a little harder? And they're like, right away, boss. And he's like, whoa, that worked. Output is up. He's like, could you guys work harder? Sure thing, boss. And he just keeps doing that as his only strategy. And then all of a sudden, like, everybody's like way burned out,
Oh
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah. Shocker.
So,
That's
yeah.
hilarious.
But I've seen companies try to do that.
But yeah, no, I would have bosses that would pick up on that and just push it for as far as they could. And that was actually, like, that was one of the big reasons why I wanted to start an agency of, like, this
Mm,
can't be the only way that we
yeah.
market. Like, this can't be the only way that jobs work, the only way that agencies work. And surely, I mean, there are so many agencies that I've come across that don't do it that way, and they are incredible with their culture. Beacon
Mm.
Media, I know they're going to be there. They're amazing. I love what Jennifer has built. But it's
And they're
just,
on the Inc. 5000 list this
I
year.
know,
I mean, they're
well
just
deserved.
it's a long
So
game
well
result.
deserved.
Yeah, totally.
Man, yeah, talk about company culture. They have tapped into something beautiful. But yeah, I mean, it's got to be a balance, right? You got to have a life.
Yeah, there's a reason there's the term agency life. I've been thinking about a couple books, and one has to do with agency life as a play on words for having lived in agency life and the churn that some agencies go through with young
Mm.
talent. They bring in young talent, they just absolutely burn through it. And then
Oh
the
yeah,
young talent walks off, maybe stronger, or maybe just simply not dead, and goes on to a different job, and then they
yeah,
do it again, and it's just this
yeah.
absolute churn. That is one way to do the business model, certainly, but the idea of agency life being what I'm really finding at my core I'm passionate about, which is how do we take as much control and responsibility for our lives as possible, and how do we
Mm.
take agency, use that definition of the word agency. How are we
Oh,
our own agent for change and creation in our lives? And there's lots of ways up that mountain. I'm not saying I have the answer. For me, talk therapy was one big answer to say,
mm. Yeah,
oh, actually, you need to address quite a bit of shame and other things that, family dynamics and all those hard yards you do to
yeah,
get to the point where you can say, at one point I could finally ask the question, okay, what if all this is my fault? And then there's a guy coming to the conference, Matt Zeman, who's going to talk psychedelics. And he said, hey, could you reframe that as like, what if this is all my creation? I was like,
Hmm.
fascinating. Like that was
I
like, I had
love
to get
that
to step
reframe.
one before I could get to step two. What's that?
What a nice rebrand.
It was yeah, it was like such a spin. I was like, whoa, man. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been thinking
Hmm.
about. And agency models are, one of a few ways. One of them is churn and burn, and another, like you and Beacon and others, are sustainable, let's play the long game.
Yeah. Actually appreciate people for who they are outside of work as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, the little
As
life
humans,
thing that some of
as
us
humans.
do. Like, yeah.
We need a part two of this podcast to talk about, to actually get to what we were
Talk about
going to talk
actual
about.
marketing.
But I love it. I totally love this. We're coming up on an hour. I need to wrap simply for another call.
Oh man. Okay, so I can I do both if I make them quick. So thing to pick up that has just resonated with me and I listen to it over and over is there was a podcast, an interview on NPR's How I Built This with Guy Raz with the gentleman, and I'm not going to try to say his name because I never say it right, even though I've heard it 100 times. But he's the guy who built Patagonia, the outdoor like adventure clothing company.
Mm-hmm.
And Haley and I listened to that when we were driving into the Nashville office very, very early. And I think we were a year into the business. And his whole concept was giving his people the autonomy, exactly what we've been talking about here. And he would say things like, if somebody wants to go surfing in the middle of the day because they feel like that's going to drive their productivity, then go surfing in the middle of the day. I don't care. Just get
That's
your
the
work
name of
done.
his autobiography, right? Is Let My People
Yes.
Go Surfing.
Let my people surf. Yes.
Yeah, Let My
Yeah.
People Surf.
And
That's
that's,
what it is.
yeah. And that's what he talked about in that podcast, which was the first time I had heard it. But he also talked about how he built an organization of entrepreneurs that he did not have to handhold so that he would just duck away into Jackson Hole for like 3 or 4 months at a time and tell his people, if something burns down, call the fire department. Don't call me. And he built the company with that longevity mindset of like, this has to stand without me. I cannot bottleneck this. And so we've been trying to adopt that and, certainly not great at it, but I just ducked out for a couple weeks and our chief technology officer just ducked out for a couple weeks and our collective families went on an Alaskan cruise together because we're all friends outside of work. And nothing burned. It was amazing. And I came back and everything was caught up for me and it was glorious. So obviously we haven't hit the Patagonia stage of life yet, but we're climbing up that mountain and that makes me really happy. But everyone should listen to that podcast. It has been a game changer for me.
I'll listen to it. I've read his book. I read his autobiography and it's fascinating. And there's also an interesting point in there about he was simply solving for the obstacles in his own life and how universal that was. So, he would go rock climbing or something like that. And then like he would be like, this carabiner really needs to be bent a certain different way. And he was just living in his own experience and he was aware about his own challenges. And some of his business philosophy you hear talked about is like, well, you just put like one foot in front of the other. It's like I can't see down the road 10 years. Like there's no need for a 10-year plan, but there is a need for continuous problem solving around the things that you're ideally passionate about, or at least most curious in, that the market will pay for. And I think it's a perfect example of, I can disappear into the mountains for a month because what I'm actually doing that feels like or looks like throwaway is probably market research if we give it the space to say, oh yeah, you're figuring out that rope frays when you belay or whatever, And so how can you solve for that? But yeah, lots in there.
I
Okay.
think
There
that's
was one
one of the
more.
things.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No, I was just going to say, I think that's one of the things that I love the most about being in the mental health space is that everyone that we've come across has some kind of backstory of why they got into the mental health profession in the first place. It resonates with them personally.
Mm.
And you can tell like people in this space are genuinely out to help other people. Like it's not
Yeah.
there are private equity backed organizations, but you don't often have a private equity company coming in and saying, okay, I'm going to be the CEO and I'm going to open up a mental health space with zero personal experience in mental health. Like maybe that exists and I haven't come by it, but I find that hard to believe. Everyone here has a story and they're not afraid to share it, and they live from that story. Like they
Mm.
live from that level of empathy. And it's
Hmm.
our job as marketers to take that level of empathy and make sure that it actually connects with the people that they want to help. And that's
Mm.
simply, we're just building bridges. That is all
Mm.
we do these days. We
Mm.
just build the bridges and we let that empathy and that passion really speak. We're just trying to get people to them so that they can have the conversation.
Mm. That's wonderful. Thank you, Kelly, for being on the show. It's been a delight, as I expected it would be, and more than that. I think we really got into some fun and fascinating topics. So thanks for taking us there.
Thank you for having me. This was really good. This was very conversational, just like you promised.